Klonoa, Door to Phantomile, a terrible name for an awesome game. This is a game that suffered greatly from crappy name syndrome. Like, what the hell is Klonoa and Phantomile? That's the first thing that enters anybody's mind when they see this, and it's the reason it became so severely overlooked. Klonoa was released in 1998 in North America for the PS1, and besides the awful name, it had another thing working against it. I think older gamers may have been turned off by the fact that the overall style was geared towards kids, and the characters were all overly cute. And that's a shame, because Klonoa is one of the best platformers released on the PlayStation. There was a sequel for the PS2, and the franchise also had a remake on the Nintendo Wii just called Klonoa. But let's talk about the original PlayStation version. As the game starts, Klonoa has a dream that a ship crashes into a hillside, and a dark shadow begins to cover the world. The dream becomes reality, and Klonoa sets out with his friend Hugh-Pow on an adventure across Phantomile to figure out what's wrong. Seriously, where did they come up with those names? The story in this game is surprisingly well done, and has some real emotional moments. At times, the plot is only generic, with the bad guy versus good guy thing and the rescue of a damsel in distress, but there's also major plot twists and tragic sequences that'll keep you interested throughout. There's a lot of characters in this game, but let's just cover the major ones. First, there's the hero Klonoa, a sort of rabbit-cat hybrid that wears a Pac-Man hat, which is a nod to Namco's mascot character, the company who developed the game. Every company has the mascot that they're known for. Sega had Sonic the Hedgehog, Nintendo had Mario, and by this point, Pac-Man was getting a little old. So I think this was an attempt by Namco to bring in a new mascot character to liven it up. But too bad they named the heroes Klonoa and Hugh-Pow, because those just aren't memorable names. So Hugh-Pow is Klonoa's sidekick, and at first it just seems to be a floating ball that goes along with you, but later it turns out to be a much more important element to the plot, which is revealed near the end in some intriguing and well-animated cinematics. Then of course there's the bad guy. He's got a bird-type face and wears a cloak. He's kinda cliche, but when you finally fight him near the end, the battle totally delivers. His goal is to unleash a demon upon Phantomile and change the world into a realm of nightmares. Around this era, most games were trying to mimic the success of Super Mario 64 by putting characters into 3D environments. Often, the result was large empty areas that looked like garbage and had annoying camera issues. Klonoa made a smart move and kept the tried but true side-scrolling gameplay style of the past, with one twist. The backgrounds are in 3D, while Klonoa keeps to a 2D plane. As I mentioned in my review of Pandemonium, this game type has come to be known as 2.5D. What's great about 2.5D is that it gives the player the feeling that they're playing a 3D game, without all those pesky camera problems. Sort of a cheap trick, but it works well. So you go through levels, here they're called visions, and you're constricted to a single plane, but it often crosses over with other paths. For example, you'll be walking on a path in the foreground and see a path in the background. A few twists and turns and you'll be walking along that background trail. Like many games, you just have to try to reach the end of a stage without dying. But where Klonoa differs is that the bad guys act as your double jump. Also, Klonoa has large ears that serve as wings. If you hold the jump button down, he hovers in the air for a brief period, and this gives you an increased jumping distance. Klonoa's main attack comes from his ring, and Hugh-Pow is encased inside of the ring. When you press attack, it's launched out, and when it hits an enemy, they inflate like a balloon. Then the inflated enemy is dragged back to you, where you can either use it to toss as a projectile, or use to perform the double jump. I have to wonder if the enemy inflation concept was inspired by Dig Dug. You can also toss stuff into the background and the foreground, which is a nice touch. Sure, you could do that with games like Turtles in Time, but back then, interaction with the background wasn't very common. Now, about Klonoa's double jump. You absolutely have to master this, because you can't obtain certain items and you can't reach certain areas without being able to pull it off well. It's an essential skill to learn, and especially important in the later levels. I'll show you an example of what I'm talking about. This, for me, was the hardest part of the game. Made it? Made it? Come on. Like that. Did you see how fucking close that was? The thing was fucking spinning. The thing fucking was spinning. Get up! Yes! Like that. Come on, come back. Yes! I fucking did it! Motherfucker. Fucking piece of shit. Holy shit, that was fucking difficult. But you know what? It was fun. And I feel a sense of accomplishment. You see how many times I was doing that for 32 minutes I was doing that. It is cool that there are parts that are this hard. It's just that it just you know, makes you want to fucking pull your hair out. But yeah, definitely a challenging game. Now, let's talk about the graphics. It would be unfair to judge them by today's standards. I can only compare it to games of the same time period, and for a game of this generation, they were charming and well done. Most of the bosses and the backgrounds are done with polygons, where the characters and the enemies are more like sprites. I found all these aspects to be full of life and captivating to look at. The story is done through the use of full-motion video cutscenes. The graphics here look different than during the actual gameplay, which some may consider a drawback, but they're well animated in their own right. The music is all good, it's always fitting, but the standout audio feature are the voices. They did something unique here and gave the characters a fictional language during the cutscenes. I thought that was really effective and a unique way of going about it. The world of Phantomile is divided up into several kingdoms. None of the levels have you only going from left to right. Instead, there's a wide variety of platforming puzzles to figure out, which are all creatively designed. For example, in one area it continually changes from light to dark, and you can only pick up enemies to throw in the brief time window that they give you when it's light. There are levels when you ride on roller coaster type carts, retrieve 4 orbs and bring them back to the start, navigate your way through giant gears, find the right color weapon to open the appropriate path. The game keeps throwing new elements at you, and it never gets boring. Every so often, there's a boss battle, each with a particular pattern to figure out, and they can be pretty tricky. The fight with the henchman called Joka is pretty cool. It seems easy at first, you just throw enemies at him, but then he changes form and it becomes like a game of Cubert where you have to change the colors of the floor. Each boss is creative in its own way. Even the end boss fight, which is divided into several sections. It seems to go on forever, but that just makes it all the more epic as a finale. There is, however, one boss battle that I could not stand. With this guy, it just gets annoying because of the bad controls. You ride on a log that waves back and forth towards this giant monster. You have to pick up enemies and throw it at the colored spots on the creature's body. A few things about this fight are frustrating. First, as you're swinging, obstacles will appear that you have to avoid. That's fine, but one of the obstacles, these big gray pillars, seem to lock up the controls momentarily, and then you end up running into them because you can't move. I don't know if this is intentional or if the game's glitching up, but either way, it's annoying. The other thing that sucks is that not only are you swinging towards the monster and away from it, but the log that you're standing on is also swaying left and right slightly. Because of this, when you get up close to the monster to throw the enemy at the colored spot, you often miss because the log rocked the wrong way. I just found this whole boss fight to be badly designed and aggravating. And speaking of aggravation, one flaw I found is the way you save your game. You begin the game with a few lives, and as you go through it, you can collect more lives by getting gems and golden coins. The issue is that when you save the game between levels, you get stuck with the amount of lives you have on this new level. So let's say you get to the very last stage, but you only had one guy left. Most likely you won't be able to beat it on just one life, so when you die, you restart the stage with the same amount of lives, with no way to get more, because you can't go back and collect more lives. At least not the first time you play. After you beat the game, it unlocks a level select option, but I'm talking about the first run through. Because of this, if you're not able to defeat a stage on a small amount of lives that you have, you may be forced to restart the entire game from the beginning. This being the case, if you decide to play this game, I recommend keeping several save files on hand if you end up getting stuck. And the other flaw I'd say in this game is that it was targeted towards kids with the cute characters, but it gets so difficult that I doubt many kids would be able to get very far. It seems like they weren't entirely clear who their target audience was. For those that are able to beat the game, there's still some replay value. Like I said before, after you beat the game, you can go back to any level that you want. One thing that you can do is try to rescue all the civilians on each level. This is comparable to collecting all the large coins in New Super Mario Bros. It's not required in order to defeat the game, but it gives you another reason to keep playing after the main quest has been completed. Also, if you end up rescuing everyone on each stage, it unlocks a bonus mode, so there's plenty of extras to keep you coming back for more. While it seems like a simple kids game at first, it ends up being quite difficult by the end and develops into a true test of your reflexes. It's a genuinely immersive experience that never feels repetitive and one that any fan of the PS1 should experience.